Hello, I'm Michael Wybrow, and in this video I'm going to do another follow-up to the Lab 6 extension activities and also to questions that have been asked in consultations over the last couple of weeks. And these are to do with how you handle login view controllers and also when you've got tab bar controllers. So in my last video, where I talked about the extensions to Lab 6, we just had a login view controller that sat in our navigation controller hierarchy. So the root view controller and navigation controller is the login screen. When the user logs in, they segue to this current party view controller. We hide the back button and we show a logout button. And this happens seamlessly if the user's already logged in, so they just feel like they start on this view controller. But if they hit logout, they go back to this one and they can re-enter their details and set up the app to view a different party. But, so one of the ways that I've seen students frequently handle a tab bar controller is they will then segue from this view controller to a tab bar controller that then has a number of different view controllers in it. And the problem with this is if you're pushing a tab bar controller onto a navigation controller stack, you've got these situations where the tab bar is hiding and showing, and also you potentially, if you have navigation controllers within each of the tabs which you want, you can have issues with two navigation bars at the top of each, at the top of the app, which can be super confusing. And if you have a look at Apple's advice on tab bar controllers, it says they should always be the top level app. Don't embed them inside another view controller. So how do we actually do this? One solution is in code, we can just replace the very top level view controller. So change it to be the login screen, and when the user logs in, we replace it with a tab bar controller. And we can do that by, in the storyboard, creating our tab bar controller, giving it an identifier like we would any storyboard ID, like we would to any view controller, and we can instantiate that in code by getting an instance of the main storyboard and asking it to instantiate that view controller. But perhaps the easiest way, and what I'll just show you in this video, is how we can display the login screen modally over the top of, say, a tab bar controller, and do so in such a way that it's full screen. And then the user can dismiss it when they're logged in, and we reveal the tab bar controller and all the normal views underneath. So what would this look like? Well, let's start with our navigation controller and let's embed this in a tab bar controller. So now at the top level we have this tab bar. I'm going to create some new view controller and put it in here. And I'm doing this just so there'll be another tab in our tab bar controller. So I'm going to select view controllers relationship segue, and I don't know, I'm going to give this a background color or something. So let's select its view and just make it, I don't know, yellow. Just so we can see when we've moved to it. Now, I'm going to delete these two segues. And I'm going to take my login view controller, and let's zoom out a little bit, and just put my login view controller down here. And now inside my navigation controller, I'm going to directly go to can I select these three together? No, I can just drag them one by one. So to review, we've got at a top level our tab bar controller. It's got two tabs. One is this navigation controller. This is another. So this is our current party, all heroes, and our create heroes. Here we've got another view controller. This one could also be easily embedded in its own navigation controller if we wanted, and it would just look like this. And then we have the login screen. And the login screen, we're going to present in code over the top of the tab bar controller if there's no active user when the app launches. So to do that, I'm going to create a manual segue, just dragging from here to this. Its type is going to be present modally, rather than the show segue that we've seen before. So present modally. I'm going to select this segue, and its presentation type I'm going to set to full screen, so it's going to cover all content, and I'm going to set it not to animate. Basically, it's just going to appear immediately over the top of the content. We're not going to see it animate in. And I'm going to give it an identifier and call it login segue. Oops. Okay, so we've got our login segue. I've got my tab bar controller. I'm also going to need a class, a custom class to represent my tab bar controller. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say file, new file, Cocoa Touch class, and I'm going to put subclass of UI tab bar controller and just call this tab bar controller. And if you have a look, a tab bar controller will, and here it is, just have a view did load, and that's pretty much it. If I run the app now, hopefully, if nothing breaks, we're going to see the app with no user. So it's going to show the initial it's going to show the initial team, but there will be no user logged in, so it'll just be blank. So we'll give it a minute. Oh yeah, so there's my tabs at the bottom. There's the yellow tab. Here's the first tab. My logout button does nothing now. And here I am. So the first thing we're going to do, and we should be logged out at the moment, is just update it so the tab bar controller will show this login screen if there's no user logged in. So how we do that is we can find our, I don't know, current or our login view controller. And I'll need the app delegate and the database controller to do this, so I can find out if anyone's logged in. So in my tab bar controller, let's just put that down here. I'm going to get the database controller. Now I'm going to modify the database controller so that it can tell me if there's an active user. So how we would do this is in my database protocol, I'm going to create a new method. Let's call it active user, and active user just returns Boolean and lets us know if there is an active user or not. I could implement this. It would look like this. And all it would need to do is use the auth controller and get the current user from the auth control. And if the current user is not nil, then there's an active user. So I can just return whether the auth controller current user is not nil. Okay, so that should allow me to check whether there's an active user or not. And I can just say here, if database controller dot active user, if active user is equal to false. If active user is equal to false, I'm just going to unwrap this. Then we're going to perform a segue, and it's going to be our login segue, and I can just trigger it from self. So basically now we would expect that when the app launches, because there's no user logged in, we're going to see the login screen presented over the top of the tab bar controller, which we don't. So something, oh yes, because I never set the custom class in my storyboard. So if we put a breakpoint in here, we'll see this code is never getting called because in my tab bar controller, I need to set a custom class here, which is the tab bar controller. Yep. Let's try it again. So that also didn't work. And we see a weird error, which says, attempt to present a login view controller on the tab bar controller whose view is not in the window hierarchy. So what I've done here, need to be careful, I've done this inside my viewDidLoad method, and I shouldn't do that yet because it hasn't yet. It can't perform a segue because it hasn't yet been shown on the screen. So I can override the viewDidAppear method, need to call the super implementation of viewDidAppear, and then I can perform this segue. So let's try it again. Okay, so we've got our login screen. So that looks great. Right now, our login buttons won't do anything. So let's see what we would need to change in my login view controller. Well, basically, I've got this version that was using the async call. What we were doing before was we were calling this login user segue. Now what we can do instead is we can call the dismiss method of the view controller, which if the view controller itself, this login screen that's presented over the top, is on top, it can be dismissed from being modally presented. And I can either animate it or I can just have it immediately disappear. So we can do that. And this is the same thing we would need to do in a couple of places wherever we've got this login user thing. And this place here. And it's these three places because there's the first one when we tap the login screen, second one when we tap the sign up one, and then there's this one when the authentication changes, which actually we don't need because we won't even be presenting this screen unless the user is not logged in. So we don't need this on authentication change. And we don't need to register it as a listener anymore. And that means we don't need this part, and we don't need this part. Okay, so let's see if we can log in here. I can say michael.wybrow@monash.edu. I can enter a password and I can log in. When I do, it dismisses the view controller Okay, after some quick debugging, just trying to work out why I don't see anything here. And it turns out we've got, we're calling this task block. And when we come in here, we can see database controller is nil. So this is because of I just overzealously deleted a bit too much code. So let's put this listener code back. And we don't need to add this as a listener, but we do need to set up the database controller because we want to use it down below. So we can get rid of this. We can get rid of this. Can get rid of these two on change methods. Now, hopefully, if I run this, we should be able to, I guess we're logged in at the moment. No, we're not. We're at this breakpoint, sorry. So if I have a look here, my database controller is not, okay, that's that one. Let's go into the next one, sorry. So here's my login screen. If I enter some random values and click login, then we should end up at this task block. And with any luck, my database controller is no longer nil, so that's fine. So I'm going to disable these breakpoints and continue. So we see a login failure here. If we enter this one and enter the correct one, it should get dismissed, which it does, and we see this. If we click the logout button, we want to present that view controller. So we're not doing that at the moment. So let's do that as a final step. In our current party view controller, when we click the logout button, which is down here, in the past we were performing the logout and then we were popping the view controller back when our login screen was in the stack. Now, instead of this, we want to ask our tab view controller to present, to perform a segue called login segue, and we can just do self. And that should be enough. Let's have a quick look. So here we are on the login screen. I can enter one of these, click login. When I do, I end up here. This looks good. If I quit the app and launch it, it should see a current user and just not display the login screen, which it does, although, however, I don't actually see any data here. So the final part of this should be in my Firebase controller. I should check, and at the moment I've got this setup hero listener happening whenever I sign in, and probably what I want to do is in here, if there's an active user, then I want to set up the hero listener. Let's give that a go. Okay, so I see the initial stuff. If I click log out, I get back to the login screen. If I put it.clayton-x.eu and put in another password for this and click login, I see my different party here. So that looks good. Okay, thanks for watching. This was a video showing how we could display a login screen over the top of a tab bar controller.